Hey guys, how are you? My name is Daniel Alejandro Cervantes. Some of you may know me as Danny Dunzo, and I am the Ball State Esports Graduate Assistant for Esports Production. But what is esports? Well, in its most basic form, it just simply means electronic sports. It's a very fast-growing industry.
Over by Bio, but not gonna be enough as doggy snap, doggy spin, doggy shot.
At this point, most of you have definitely heard about it at least once.
The SKT dynasty is over! All hail the new kings!
But esports didn't get here overnight. Obviously, something built up to this. And today, I want to discuss the phenomenon known as esports, its past, present, and future.
Two, this could be it. Another chance for Jing. It's all over.
그래도 오고 아무데게도 오고 있고요. Between the box, what a shot on Simple! Oh, Guardian, bye-bye! And it's on to Flamey. He's tapped it. Flamey's got a big... Into the net! The marksman for Crew spots the corner through his scope and takes aim.
Siavoski has something to say here in OT.
Oh, what a dish. Little 1-2-1 combo from the boys on Liquid to get it done and force another Game 7.
Oh, you can't write it.
Believe it or not, if we're going to be discussing esports, we need to go all the way back to the year 1972, where Stanford University unbeknowingly held the first ever esports event revolving around the 1962 game Intergalactic Space Wars. It was created by Steve Russell and a few colleagues at MIT, originally for his university's PDP-1. The first prize winner would be Bruce Bonberg, who would be the first ever winner of esports. Did he go home in a Lamborghini or $1 million prize pool? Nope, a one-year subscription to Rolling Stone. It would take a while to get to where we are now, but for now it was more sporadic tournaments every here and there.
Yes, tonight we'll be discovering just who the Space Invader champion of the Midlands is. With the 5 highest scorers from last week's event at the NEC, who will be battling it out on the Atari home computer games.
With the release of the home console, esports became more accessible as more people were able to work and hone on their craft and skills. In fact, the winner of this event was a 13-year-old boy named Frank Faron. But his grand prize was just another Atari home console. So what gives? When do we see this threshold where we start to see $40 million grand prizes like we see today? What is the leap that's going on? Well, for that, let's go ahead and travel across the world to South Korea. In the late 90s and early 2000s, esports in Korea completely blew up, especially revolving around StarCraft Brood Wars. And this was not something small, it was a major production. It was seen as another national icon. To the Koreans, esports was just as popular as basketball was to us. And this is large part thanks to OGN, a broadcasting network in South Korea that really focused on esports and pushed it into the mainstream. This allowed esports to be recognized by virtually everybody, even those who were not into video games. And this led to many things like players and contracts, and even orgs like, for example, KT Roaster, a telecom network in South Korea, to invest in creating teams. To clarify, it was not just telecom networks that were trying to get involved into esports. Many different organizations all across Korea tried to get their hands on what was the next big thing, and boy were they right. However, it was the addition of SK Telecom T1 that would involve what's known as the Telecom Wars. The Telecom Wars was very important, as it was essentially the first form of mainstream rivalry that existed in Korea. SK Telecom T1 versus KT Roaster. Usually whenever there was any competition, you knew they were both going to be involved, and it was widely accepted that one of them would end up winning the events. And even when a lot of them had to quit in order to do their mandatory 2-year military service, which all Korean males have to do at some point in their lives, their org was still able to replace them, and their rivalry continued to live on. This is more important than you think, because just a decade ago, the NBA wasn't really as big in the United States until the two main rivals, the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers, founded with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, really pushed basketball to the mainstream. It shows that rivalries are very important for the growth of any sport to really take place.
Game meant a lot to everybody, not just me and Magic Collie, but this is the first shot they had all year, and they won look good in front of the crowd. They did.
It came to a point that even though StarCraft would eventually lose steam, the rivalry created by KT Roaster and SK Telecom will continue to be seen in many other future events, similar to how the Lakers and the Boston Celtics to this day still hold each other as their main rivals. Now, some of you might be wondering, what about the United States? The closest we realistically have, it would be MLG or straight up Major League Gaming. It included many of the popular titles from Xbox, which included Halo and Call of Duty. So why wasn't this as big, or why did most of you probably haven't even heard of this? Well, you're not alone. Most gamers or casual gamers like myself during that era had no idea this even really existed, or those who did know knew its vague existence. It was essentially trying to push this idea that you can make a living playing video games, but it tried going to a more traditional route, where having most of their games being held on television. Now, while this worked well in Korea, unfortunately, it didn't really take place well in the United States. Even gamers kind of made fun of the idea of pro gamers themselves. It was not as respected as it was in South Korea. Not to mention, even when it did go on television, the broadcast was very unsophisticated.
Let's make some noise and introduce your first team, Cloud9!
While the broadcasting would eventually increase to very high standards, in fact, North American broadcasting is often called one of the best in the world, it took a long time for it to get there. So I asked my good friend Vansili, who was in the scene as one of the top casters, and get his opinion on it.
Back then, when we first started, we were basically doing everything on our own, right? So when it comes down to, first off, how the broadcast went out, we were casting in audio only. So it was like listening to your AM radio with no video. And then people had to manually synchronize between what you were saying versus what they were seeing on screen. So let's say, for example, I'm casting a game like Counter-Strike 1.5 back then. There was a client called HLTV, which is basically like GoTV, or now what we use to observe our games for like our pugs in ESCA or FPL. So they would log into this engine, and then they're just in the same waiting room as I am in a waiting room. And then they would log into this broadcast software called Winamp Shoutcast, right? Or just Winamp in itself. So it's not necessarily a broadcast, but it's just like basically the precursor of what would be Spotify today, for example, right? So instead of subscribing to like a streaming provider for audio, we would actually illegally download all our music, of course, and then we needed something to play that on, so we used a program called Winamp, for example. So Winamp, they would plug in now an IP, which would be the IP that I use to broadcast the game, the audio only. And then once they hear me, and then I say, hey, we're about to go live in 3, 2, 1. So that's how they actually manually. So they realize, okay, he's going live in 3 seconds. So when I say live in 3, 2, 1, go, they'll probably pause at go. And then in the client in itself, they'll see the timer come down to 3, 2, 1. And then they manually unpause my audio broadcast, and then hopefully manually synchronize by alt-tabbing between the game and myself in order to synchronize as much as they can.
So what was the next real push in North American esports? Well, let's just say it came out of nowhere with a punch to the face. Or better yet, a punch to the screen. Nobody could have imagined how massive League of Legends was going to be, not just in terms of player base, but honestly its importance to gaming as a whole. It introduced many important concepts that are just simply standard to gaming today. For starters, League of Legends did a lot of things that will become a mainstream staple in gaming today. For starters, it involved the idea of free-to-play games that are then backed by microtransactions. Additionally, it was created with software that could be played on literally a quote-unquote potato of a computer. This made it accessible for just about anybody. See, back then, games like World of Warcraft would usually require some sort of monthly subscription to play. And most importantly, it added what is called a ranked system. At this point, virtually all games have these, but it's the idea that every time you play online, you are matched with other people in your skill level, and when you win, your rank goes up, and when you lose, the rank goes down. This makes it insanely easy to know where you rank compared to your peers, or even some of the top players in the world. Now this was important not just because of the fact that it was admittedly pretty addictive and allowed you to climb up and really challenge yourself, especially against your friends, but allowed you to grab those same friends and be able to form a team and go against other people and climb the ranks together as a team. However, that was really just limited to your own region and the occasional foreigners that would try to play in the North American servers, albeit with a lot more latency due to the fact that they're playing from other areas of the world. But it was that desire to play with people from across the globe that would eventually lead to the most important annual event in esports.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Almia Convention Center, Jönköping, Sweden. We are here for the DreamHack Summer 2011 Championship game. The finals about to go underway, a $100,000 tournament held by League of Legends and Riot Games. With a Pay Safe card, HD stream is what you're viewing. SteelSeries helping out with some of the peripherals, and as well as the Alienware computers, taking these guys all the way to the finish line.
Alienware.
Alienware.
Okay, there we go.
Needless to say, the first World is nowhere near as big as the ones that will follow it. However, it did include both European and American teams. That was really it for now. The first Worlds was usually just the Western teams, and in terms of audience, well, I'll let them say it for themselves.
We have about 80 to 90 people sitting in front of us right now.
80 to 90 was a lot at the moment. Of course, I had no idea how big it would get. That being said, Fnatic took home the first ever Worlds.
First place and 50 grand to Fnatic.
However, little did Fnatic or much of the West know at the time, but the big juggernauts of the game, Korea, was getting ready to take their own step in League of Legends. In fact, right now it was KT roster of all teams who had two rosters that was competing at a high level, and of course, their main rivals was SKT, who little did they know, they had just picked up on their sister team a player by the name of Faker, who will soon be the Michael Jordan of League of Legends. And now that each region had their giants, it was now time for Worlds 2012.
"12 teams fighting for $2 million starts here at LA Live. The Season 2 World Championship kicks off with 8 of those teams competing in 2 round-robin group stages. The top 2 teams from each group will move on to the quarterfinal round.
And no, you did not mishear that. While the amount of regions grew substantially, so did the prize pool alongside with it. Now it was $2 million as opposed to $50,000, and that's where we really start to see the growth of these major prize pools and how it continues to turn into the mainstream. And now this is where we begin to really see it grow, like I said, in teams. We see Korea sending 2 teams, Azubu Frost and Najin Shield, America, as well as China, and 1 team from Taiwan. But it was everybody knew pretty much that it was going to be likely Korea, and the Korea was going to win the next few Worlds. Well, almost.
Not playing like the underdog any longer, the Taipei Assassins push their way to the Nexus, defeating Azubu Frost to become the Season 2 World Champions.
For all of your support tonight during the playoffs and throughout the season. So please join us in congratulating your Season 2 World Champions, the Taipei Assassins!
So from the country of Taiwan, the Taipei Assassins will be the first one to take these $1 million prize pool home from League of Legends. Now if you look at the crowd, that looks a bit more than 80 to 90 people, as previously mentioned. This will be the last year that that trophy did not end up in the hands of a Korean team. The LCK, or League Champions Korea, continued to grow, and at this point it now became obvious who the face of the league was, Faker, or in real name Lee Hyun-yoon. As the Korean team was able to really prop up their scene, they were ready for Worlds 2013, where they were going to become the undisputed kings of League of Legends. Worlds took place in the Staples Center, with again a lot more than 80 to 90 people this time. The same arena that usually hosts Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal was now hosting the greatest players of League of Legends, and this is a whole show including an opening band, a musical performance, all in time to watch Faker take his first tournament to really cement his legacy.
Does he manage to knock him up? Yes, he does. Surely the shockwave comes in, but it does not matter. First blood, Faker.
While gamers are going crazy, what really caught everyone else by storm was the fact that that year, the NBA Finals, where LeBron James and Dwayne Wade took on the San Antonio Spurs in electric 7 games, had an aggregate viewership of about 15.5 million. Meanwhile, Worlds 2013 taking place here in Los Angeles, California, garnered a whopping 27.5 million views, almost doubling that of the NBA Final. And this inspired many college-age students to start creating new programs. But some of you might be wondering, Danny, how is that you're in a college and this is your graduate assistantship position? When did this happen? Well, believe it or not, this actually happened about a decade ago.
Legends varsity team, where we offer scholarships for the best players we can get to come and participate.
About a year after Worlds, Robert Morris University will be the first school to have a varsity program just for esports.
To introduce 10 scholarships for top-level League of Legends players next year.
Esports is the massive world around video games. It's the competitive element, it is the community that supports it and plays these games, and the entertainment component that millions of people tuning in to watch their favorite games.
A few years after, University of California, Irvine will be the first public university to host scholarships for esports. Now, it didn't take long for the mainstream media to catch wind of this, and you might be wondering, how did they react to this? Well, frankly, they reacted the way they always do, with an open mind to new things, especially video games.
That's not a
It's not a real sport. Talking about the 20 million people who are watching the damn thing.
And the money
they
that
gotta
they're
be
making.
crazier
And
than
they're
the ones
paying
big money to watch it.
It's $1 million.
As recreational gaming has really taken off, so has the esports industry, where a select few play for highly trained teams and leagues, bringing in millions and millions of viewers and even more money.
All around the world have gathered to battle in 4 tournaments.
We're not just a bunch of bros drinking beer and playing Mario Kart in the basement.
12 international college and university teams are vying for bragging rights and monetary reward.
Wrestling fans are booger eaters, and esports players are nerds.
Now here we are in the present day. It has now become a mainstream media phenomenon, and additionally, collegiate interest continues to grow. That would be more or less where the threshold of the modern day really begins to show. And don't worry, although the mainstream media did, of course, have, I guess, skepticism, you can say, it definitely had its supporters. Not just supporters from everyday people, but even high-level celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Rick Fox, and even Shaquille O'Neal.
Follow along, the commentators are unbelievable. The preparation that they have, the production that they have, it's really fascinating. I've been there. I've been to where they shoot everything, and they sell out stadiums.
They are digital athletes. They're professional digital athletes. What? No, look. Scared you, didn't I? Fish gun. Tough thing. Got to put some elbow grease into it.
And this support from these high-level celebrities are not just simply voicing their concern against the critics, as well as voicing their support for the scene. This has also led to things like investment into the scene, and this investment will eventually lead to modern-day franchising. Now, while franchising is a little unpopular due to it taking away its grassroots feel, it was undoubtedly necessary for its growth.
These guys are getting paid to do this. The league minimum is $50 grand a year?
Yes.
And how high does it go potentially?
So there currently isn't a salary cap, so the scale is as good as, and is, to me, demand of the players.
Now, so Overwatch League, is that like, Mike, is that like NFL? Like, is that today's version of the NFL, only an online
yeah,
game?
Megan, this is how they've dialed it up. I mean, they're now envisioning Boston playing against New York, or Boston playing against Houston, and Miami playing against Houston.
So the growth of franchising and esports and collegiate, it seemed like, most importantly, despite the stability it brings, that North America finally had its sort of identity. It had a clear game plan for how it wanted to grow esports here in the West. Globally as well. You see, we had our own Michael Jordan esports. I know I said his name quite a few times, Faker, but Faker was now a bona fide legend as opposed to a rookie looking for his first ring.
TP coming in, Faker looking to make the play, he gets Ruler, Owner goes in, and again the combos are clean, the hostile takeover is damn well hostile.
Really propelled its global reach even to countries that normally weren't associated with video games.
Welcome to the dynamic world of esports, a rapidly growing sector within the gaming industry that is taking India by storm.
Everything was going great. The mainstream media was finally starting to warm up to this, and although there were some financial question marks, any league and any form of genre was always going to hit that roadblock. Some people did not like that there was no relegation, not that there was franchising, there were set teams as opposed to a group of 5 people getting together and playing, but those are good problems to have. Everything went great until it wasn't.
The state of California is suing video game company Activision Blizzard for sexual harassment and discrimination. Earlier this week, hundreds of employees participated in a walkout to protest what they call the company's frat boy culture. Some women spoke with local journalists saying the lawsuit is the start of the Me Too movement for the video game industry.
Riot Games is paying up. The video game giant has agreed to pay $100 million to settle a gender-based discrimination lawsuit with more than 2,000 current and former female employees.
Now, I want to discuss a very important issue. I believe that esports is amazing. It has brought a lot of people from around the world together and allowed people to pursue their passions. Unfortunately, a lot of people grew up behind a computer screen in this scene, where their words and their actions most of the time led to no real consequences. Now, this is an issue with the internet as a whole, but specifically among esports, the reason why this is very problematic is that some of these bad actors proceeded to get jobs in mainstream esports organization, as well as even some of the game publishers themselves. And these have led to accusations of racism, sexism, homophobia, and frankly, many other forms of bigotry. This is unfortunately a big issue that plagues the esports world. Because Van Silly has had the pleasure of working with many different kinds of people, I feel like he's someone who is very appropriate to ask. Not just what he's noticed in terms of sexism or bigotry, but also what he's personally gone through himself.
If I want to take this from an outsider's perspective and looking in, it's not necessarily on just us being POC. It's more on like, what is the community of choice, if I could put it that way, right? That you want to start attacking from somebody who tries to be a little bit edgy and somebody who doesn't know more in those years where they're like kind of like growing up. So let's be more direct with that, right? So for example, me as an Asian now, 25 years later or so, being in the well, let's say 22, close to 25 years in the esports industry, it definitely has changed from, you know, when I first started until today. There's a lot less of like, oh, hi, look at him, you know. But if you're looking at now in 2024, the communities that are being attacked are marginalized genders or women or, you know, anything else. Now, even, you know, African Americans for the past few years, right? That still is predominant and prevalent. It still exists for people of color like you and I. But for me personally, I see it a little bit less, but it still happens, right? To a certain extent, maybe it's not as heavy as it used to be in those 20 years ago. But as I just mentioned, like women or marginalized genders, there are communities that get it way harder, just like I used to back 25 years ago.
And as you mentioned, different groups get different forms of harassment, but it's no secret that in the esports industry, the marginalized communities seem to get it the worst. Despite this, I do feel action is being done. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, but honestly, I am very optimistic about the future for esports, and I'm going to show you why in a second. Now, like I said, action does seem to be happening. Many different organizations like Women in Gaming or Gamers are taking steps to fight back.
Changing that by marketing specifically to them and for them. The Gamers is a media platform, social networking community, and lifestyle brand for women and femme-identifying people who game and work in the gaming industry.
Additionally, the blueprint of Collegiate seems to be now scholastic as it's going through high school and middle school as well. Many different orgs are coming together and creating a nice esports experience for people of all ages.
Why? And the read from DYMZ, I was about to give so much props.
One example is at TEC, which is creating games every week from Tuesday to Thursday, from Rocket League to VAL to Smash for high school age kids. But the next major leap will controversially be taking place in Saudi Arabia, with the world's first Esports World Cup. An aggregate prize pool of $64 million.
Welcome to the Esports World Cup. We're on the Qiddiya stage where the players will fill the seats tomorrow to play for a whopping prize pool of $1 million.
There'll be many different games with different prize pools that add up to that $64 million. I will not discuss this too much because of the controversy revolving it taking place in Saudi Arabia, but nonetheless this is a huge leap forward for mainstreaming esports as a whole. But that being said, how are we doing with the collegiate scene back home? Well, let's just say we fly. The best thing about the collegiate scene is that it allows you to study and get a degree while pursuing esports. That way you have a lot of job security. However, esports in itself doesn't really have that job security, and it makes a lot of people anxious to really pursue it forward.
100%. And even before this whole thing around Blizzard and Riot or whatnot, it's still always something that lingers, right? Because if you want to try to choose a career, a path to pro, either it's a caster as a talent or as a player, what is your true path to pro, right? What is your path after that career, right? So how can these skills be transferred into something else? And there is no real answer to it right now, right? If you're a pro player and you're under the heavy scrutiny of the people that are criticizing you online for one bad game, and then unfortunately you get benched, after that bench and your contract is over, where do you go?
And while that question still hasn't been answered, I think one question has been: can esports bring a community together? Can esports allow people to pursue their passion? Can esports be something that we see continue to grow in the future? And despite all its many flaws, the answer to me is an undoubtable yes. Thank you for watching. This has been Esports, past, present, and future.